Hello, everyone. So my name is André Wagmeester. I'm here with Thiago, and we're going to do an introduction into Wikidata. I guess we are here somewhere in the bars, but to start it out, I can also point as a sort of appetizer. I can point to the to our Scholia pages. And so if I'm going to introduce Thiago. So Thiago is a researcher from Brazil, and you may want to ask, so who is Thiago? Well, you can listen to me, but what you can also do is go to a platform called Scholia, and maybe I should put in the link, or maybe Thiago, you can put in the links while I'm talking, and I'll do the same when you do the thing. So Scholia is a viewer of Wikidata. So we can actually, so what you're seeing here is this is an image of Thiago, and Thiago has a Wikidata QID, has a list of publications, and I'm going to scroll down. So if you're interested in what Thiago has been writing, here are a list of his papers. There is a number of publications per year, a number of pages per year, topic scores, topics on the author work. So the first topic of Thiago is COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic, Wikidata cell type, etc. We have a topic related work matrix, and the work is used in the following works. It's Scholia. These are all the tools. So and everything that is seen here comes from Wikidata. So before I'm wondering, does it need an introduction here? I don't know if we can raise hands, but here, who knows here what Wikidata has heard of Wikidata? No hands? Okay. Chris Mongol. Oh, we can actually stop the talk now, Thiago. This seems good.
Heard of it, not.
Heard of it. Okay, so let's dive in. I'm gonna start with work I did for the last, well, since 2014, so almost the last decade, which is the GeneWiki project, which started in 2008. I joined that project in 2014. And the GeneWiki project initially started out with the objective to create a Wikipedia article for every human gene known at that time. So
Andra, can I interrupt you one moment? Can you go into full screen mode for the presentation, if it's possible?
Yeah, but I couldn't find a button. So I was just, that's why somehow my screen for Google Slides messed up, because I'm actually expecting a menu here. And do you know the show? If someone knows the key, I've entered full screen, then I can do that.
It's Command F5 or Control F5.
Yeah, Control. Nothing
F5.
happens.
Just close the themes bar on the right, then the slide gets a bit bigger.
Okay. I'm really surprised because it's not the first time I'm using slides, but I don't know what happened in here. The themes is a good idea. So is this more readable?
Yes, it's okay.
Sorry for this. I'm going to check one more time to always toolbars, reload this page. No, I can't find the button to go to full screen or presentation mode here, and sorry for that. So the GeneWiki project started in 2008, and the project made a bot that actively contributed to the talk to the API of Wikipedia. So not Wikidata, but the English Wikipedia, and populated started a Wikipedia stub, and the stub consisted of data imported from structured data, which is the info box, and the info box had links to various databases and data sources, and there was summarized knowledge that came from crowdsourcing and references from the literature. And the idea was that by creating stubs, the English-speaking community had templates that could be used to develop full-fledged articles for any given gene. However, this was only in English, and there are more languages. In total now, Wikipedia comes with up to 300 languages, which creates a sort of update or curation mess, because if some information on a gene changes, it needs to be reflected across different languages. This is not only for the genes, but any topic or any concept that is being addressed in Wikipedia. Whenever there is a new political leader, 300 language communities need to update their Wikipedias, which can lead to artifacts like this. So here we see the info boxes for malaria, from the Wikipedia pages on malaria. In Dutch, there is a statement saying that the ICD-10 code for malaria is B50. In Greece, also B50. But if you speak English, you suddenly have more information, because it states that B50 to B54 has malaria, is related to malaria. The same goes, for example, the population size of Aruba, a small island in the Caribbean. If we go to the Dutch Wikipedia, suddenly we see there were 103,000 inhabitants. In the Greek Wikipedia, there is suddenly 107, and in English we have additional information. So, is this because one of those Wikipedias is incorrect? No, because in Wikipedia, the requirement is that references should be available, and we see that in those cases with the 2 and the 1s that there are references, but the differences could be due to different standards, different calculation methods used, or there is a difference in time when it's added to the Wikipedia. So, moving forward to cater this, the Wikimedia Foundation, who hosts Wikipedia, started Wikidata in 2012. And the idea is, instead of capturing data in all the different different languages, there is an underlying platform which is called Wikidata. Wikidata is built on the exact same framework as Wikipedia, being the MediaWiki with an extension, and it comes with a Sparkler endpoint, which is as an attachment to this workflow. And how does it work? So instead of then having to update all the Wikipedia, all the information in 300 Wikipedias, it can be stored in the same in one Wikidata item, from which the different Wikipedias can get some rudimentary information to populate their Wikipedia articles. So how do we get from Wikipedia to Wikidata? We see here a Wikipedia article on reeling, and if we go to the menu, and in some, depending on which template or which visualization layer you want to have, or not visualization, which style you want to use, this menu might be on the right, but I'm still using the old style, and then it's on the left. There is a link to the Wikidata item. So when we start from this article, we go to the Wikidata item, we enter up, we get to the reelin Wikidata item, which has some statements that can be used in both in Wikipedia articles and beyond. If we dive a bit better, I tried to reflect the anatomic structure of a Wikidata item in here. So here we have the retinoic acid receptor alpha, which has a QID, which is the identifier in Wikidata, which is Q254943. If you go to Wikidata, there to this QID, as it is called, there will be a Wikidata item that has the label. It has a header. In the header, we have a preferred label and some aliases and a description. So the preferred label being retinoic acid receptor alpha, and then as some synonyms or aliases, nuclear receptor subfamily 1 group B member 1 or RARA, and a short description on what it is. And then I'm skipping to the bottom. We'll dive deeper into the statements later. And there is in the footer, there are what is called the site links, and these site links point to the relevant Wikipedia articles. So if we want to get from the English Wikipedia article, if we want English Wikipedia information on this retinoic, we can go to the English Wikipedia page, which is or the Spanish one, or the Ukrainian one, or the Arabic one, and these links will point to the different Wikipedias. This is one of the powerful values of Wikidata, because we can leverage these language links to get translations from these terms, which I will get back to a bit later. But then we go to the statements. So for those of you familiar with RDF, which I can assume in this community is, we can see there is a similarity. The statements reflect what we see in an RDF statement. However, in Wikidata, the statements are actually consist of a subject being the QID, a predicate, which is called a property, molecular function, and the object, retinoic acid binding. However, in the Wikidata model, that triple is extended with a set of references and a set of qualifiers, which allows storing the provenance and context of that statement. So Wikidata is then, but as I said, Wikidata is using the same infrastructure as Wikipedia, with the exception that it comes with Sparkle endpoint. But it also comes with everything that comes with Wikipedia. That means version control, discussions, track history, and more importantly, it's a community edit platform. So like in Wikipedia, anyone, both machines and humans, can edit Wikidata, which you see here, where we have bots, a person, a bot, and a bot. So a lot of it's editable by anyone, both man and machine. Now I'm going to step out a bit. I'm going to pause a bit if there are some questions before diving into licensing. If not, I'm going to dive into how to get external data into Wikidata. One of the things here, Wikidata comes with a CC0 license, which means, which is a CC0 license. If you go to the bottom of Wikidata, there is the license statement. Is all structured data from the main property, lexeme and entity schema namespaces, is available under the Creative Commons CC0 license. And text in the other namespaces, which is basically the wiki text and the help documents, is available under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike. So what does this mean for us or for anyone who wants to add Wikidata within the GeneWiki project? We were destined to align public resources on genes, proteins, and chemical compounds and diseases with Wikidata. It basically means we can only add content to Wikidata if it is CC0, if the license of the data source is licensed with CC0. But now I have to disclaim that I'm not a lawyer, or if we only make a mapping to the identifier. So in the next slide, I have a table that shows which license go together. So there is a thing that really applies when talking about adding data to Wikidata is license stacking. And here we can see that if it's CC0, and when it can be reused together, because the with license stacking, the general rule is when combining or reusing data, the derivative work must be licensed under the most restrictive license of all the contributing data sets. This means that if we are coming in to Wikidata with a CC BY or a CC BY NC or an CC BY ND license, and we can only reuse it within Wikidata if we have if we can share that knowledge in Wikidata with CC BY or CC BY SA, which is not the case. So currently, and this was the line in the GeneWiki project, only CC0 licensed data can go into Wikidata. And then the process continues as follows. So whenever I'm going to now explain the workflow that was used in the GeneWiki project. And the first step was whenever there was a new resource that we wanted to add to Wikidata, we had what we call community engagement and model discussions. So here I have some photos of a process on an ontology on grants and projects. And we wanted to align that within Wikidata. And here that happened into a workshop, but often it was just a Google Doc and a set of Zoom calls, even pre-COVID, where we tried to align the Wikidata data model with the data model of the source that we want to add. And what we're doing in this first stage is trying to get a model, and it is exactly as it is here on a piece of paper. I recently learned that the term used for this is a boxology. Is we were trying to draw a boxology that aligns with both Wikidata and the source being scrutinized and aligned with Wikidata. Once the consensus came in, once there was consensus on the diagram, a more formal model is extracted from that data set. And that was then depicted in a formal description. We are using shape expressions, which is a formal language to describe RDF, which allows us 4 things. We can do legacy reviews. This turned out to be very important because if you come in with a source X, it is often that terms that exist in term X already exist in Wikidata. And then the thing that we needed to do is identify which patterns, which schemas were used and existed in Wikidata already. And this is needed to be changed, or we need to adapt that in the source. We have with this model we have documentation. We can check it for pre-submission. So whenever data comes into Wikidata, we can use these shape expressions to identify whether a data set fits the agreed model. So so since 2019, Wikidata has an entity schema extension that allowed storing these models, which means that we can then validate incoming input with the entity schema defined. So the model described here in a more intuitive form was transformed into formal representation and can then be tested in Wikidata. The next step then is once we have the model set, we have checked the consistency within Wikidata and in the source. The next step was developing the bots. And what we did with the community at the same time, we manually completed 2 to 5 records, Wikidata items. And then we wrote a bot that did the same additions. We then waited a bit for the community to respond. If there was consensus, we moved on. We restarted the bot with 10 items, 100 items, and depending on how the discussion went, and we did more iterations or went to production that aligned what the source with Wikidata. So here I have a bit of the workflow that was followed. So we have a arbitrary data set that goes into Wikidata. If the item is not in Wikidata, it is being added. If it is in Wikidata, the entity schema that was derived was checked in Wikidata. If it didn't align, it was sent. It was set aside and listed for further curation. If it aligned, it was updated. After update, it was again checked because sometimes the update made the underlying schema invalid, in which case it was also logged for curation. But if it still fits, the item was updated. And so once we went through the process of modeling, building the bots, running it in incremental steps, and moving to production, the bot went to production and was regularly updated, depending on following the same update cycle as the source. And basically, the GeneWiki then delivered the following pipeline. The disease ontology was one of the resources being tested, being used. So the disease ontology has its own curation cycle. The Wikidata community has its own curation cycle. And then the bioinformatician and the biocurator were gatekeepers between these resources. So both the bioinformatician and the biocurator then checked both cycles, and if there was an update suggestion from Wikidata, that was sent to the curation team of the disease ontology and vice versa. I'm going to skip this a bit. This is just there is a Python library called the Wikidata integrator that was specifically built for within the GeneWiki project, and here are some links. And I think Thiago already mentioned the paper. This was our latest paper that shows that describes the diagram or the link data cloud that the GeneWiki bots maintained on the genes, the diseases, etc. And I think that's my cue for you now, right, Thiago?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Andrew. I sent only the older GeneWiki project. I'm just sending right now in the chat this one, the orange boxes one, the Wikidata as a knowledge graph for the life sciences. And yeah, I think I can. Let's see if I can steal the screen for you.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, I guess you can now see my screen. That's what Zoom told me. All right, so Andrew has introduced a bit of Wikidata and how it works, the data model behind. So, and now I'm gonna focus on a practical aspect, and it's the mapping of ontologies to Wikidata. It's not always simple, it's not always easy. There are complications in how we can combine the obo-foundry ontologies and the Wikidata. That's kind of our focus. So if you have questions about what I'm going to present now, you can just ask me. So this is one Wikidata entry for the concept of a neuron. Let's see if I can. I'm not able to zoom it further. But yeah, okay. So there is the entry and there's a label on Wikidata. Then we have a description. It's not a definition. Wikidata doesn't work with definitions in the strict ontological sense of neither logical definitions nor description definitions. The meaning of concepts is kind of embedded in a combination of the labels, descriptions, aliases, and statements. So it's a bit more, let's say, loose definitions of what terms are. And then each page on Wikidata is connected to several Wikipedia pages or none. It depends on how popular the concept is. So if you have a concept like a neuron, it's a very popular concept, very important, and a lot of different Wikipedia languages talk about it. And then you have a set of statements on Wikidata. It's a cell type, and then they might not be always consistent with each other. You cannot apply reasoning to Wikidata in the same way you can apply to an obo-foundry ontology. they're not necessarily perfectly logical, because they kind of have to deal with different opinions, different ideas. If you have a reference that says that something has a relation, it might conflict with other reference. And though the community has mechanisms to try and figure out these, there's room for some degree of diversity, let's say. But one of the things that I want to show you here is that entities on Wikidata, they often have links to many different databases, ontologies, and other providers of structured information. So for example, the concept of neuron, it is connected to the FMA entry for neuron, and then you can navigate in the graphic user interface to FMA, and so it goes. You can go for many different library and the SORI. You can go to mesh descriptors, and there's a pretty extensive list of manually created mappings, and these are, as Andrea mentioned, a combination of programmatic mappings and human-based mappings that they're mapping these Wikidata terms to different ontologies and databases, right? So one of the things that it could be interesting for us at Wikidata and for the ontology community is to have this kind of mappings between both that databases done in a way that is accurate. You probably cannot make very strong assumptions of these mappings. So statements there on Wikidata, we probably don't want them to be immediately transferable to the ontologies, but there are ways that these links can be useful. So one of these, it's not, as Andrew mentioned in the chat, it's not an ontology, but a kind of a proxy. It's a knowledge graph in a broader sense, and there is room for disagreement. Yeah. So one of the benefits of mapping, for example, obo-ontologies to Wikidata is, let me say, if I want to take the cell ontology and take all the terms in the cell ontology and ask you, what is the most popular concept there? I mean, if I want to make a list of 10 cells, given their relevance, 10 cell types, given their relevance to scientists, which would be these 10 cell types? So if you have mappings to Wikidata, you can have mappings to the different Wikipedia languages, and then you can run a Sparkle query and ask, so which are the concepts in the cell ontology that have most Wikipedia links? So first the concept of cell, then red blood cell, neuron, white blood cell, egg cell, stem cell. So these are probably the concepts in Wikidata. There are the concepts in the cell ontology that are more relevant to the world. So this is just a small example why mapping things to Wikidata can be useful for ontology curators, for ontology people. And of course, you can run Sparkle queries with much more complexity than this, and explore this whole universe of triples in the Wikidata triple store. If I can share the cell ontology query, sure. Here it is. So, and then you can get some other terms like A2 and macrocells. They only have one Wikipedia page, and many other terms won't have any Wikipedia pages. Yeah. So now I'm going to just tell a bit what's the status of this mapping of obo-ontologies to Wikidata. Maybe, yeah, I think the full screen might be working. So in Wikidata, we have different relations, properties that they are used to connect terms to other terms or to concepts. They work like relations in any ontology or knowledge graph. But one different thing that is important to notice is that while you can just go ahead and create any term on Wikidata, you cannot just go ahead and create properties. The properties, they pass through a community discussion, and they might be approved or rejected based on whether people think it's useful or not. So you cannot just batch create properties that connect Wikidata to every single ontology. Everything in this page that you're seeing, every PID was crafted after community discussion, right? And these are every P followed by a number is a different property on Wikidata that will link something like a neuron to the cell ontology, or some protein like reelin or whatever to the protein ontology. And besides these properties that were crafted for making the mappings between particular ontologies and Wikidata terms, there are some general properties that can be used for mapping any resource to Wikidata. So there's exact match, narrow match, and broad match, and they work like the SCOS exact match and alike terms. Andrea, if you want to complement anything, feel free to just open the microphone. All right. So there are 23 different relations, and it doesn't mean that these ontologies are mapped to Wikidata. It doesn't mean that the axioms, the statements, and the ontologies are mapped to Wikidata. It doesn't mean that the terms are present. It just means that Wikidata has the infrastructure to do the mapping. And to do this mapping, one process that we do is kind of the baseline Wikidata matching to catalogs process, is to using something called a mix and match catalog. I'm going to show you a bit what this mix and match catalogs look like. And there are catalogs for many ontologies, for others there isn't yet. It's not that there shouldn't be, just that no one went through the process of making them. And some others, like the gene ontology and disease ontology, they were mapped by the GeneWiki project. So there's no, in theory, no need for human creation of this, of additional human standard catalog creation of this. So there's no catalogs there. So for each of these catalogs, you enter it in a table corresponding to the terms. Let me see it like this. You have a table with the IDs for each term that you want to map. You have the label in the ontology. It's called name in the restricted vocabulary of mix and match, and then a description. You upload this to the database, and then in some algorithms run and try to map and make this kind of suggestions. And then you go ahead and you see, for example, you have the Ruber ontology, and you have some terms that are fully matched. It means that someone already made these mappings, either bots or humans or some kind of entity that made these mappings of Wikidata to Uber. They make preliminary matches. So for example, it mapped vitreous body to vitreous humor. So and then you as a human curator go in the platform and say, yeah, this is a correct match, or no, it is not a correct match. And for some ontologies, the coverage it's pretty decent. So if you go for the cell ontology, it's basically fully matched to Wikidata. There are some differences because these mix and match catalogs, they are static and the ontologies are not. They are fluid, so we don't have currently a good way of keeping up with these changes in ontologies and how these changes affect the Wikidata ecosystem. This is something to work on. But for some ontologies, we have a pretty good coverage of the mappings, mostly because someone worked a lot in doing these mappings. And the ones that are missing for Wikidata are obsolete terms. So when I did the import of the mix and match catalog, I didn't remove the obsolete terms. So they are in the catalog, but we don't necessarily want them on Wikidata. We don't want to create terms for that, but that's another discussion. Other ontologies, they have less mapping. So for example, the Uber ontology, we have around 3,000 out of 13,000 possible matches. For the food ontology, we have 40 matches out of 2,000. So these things, they vary a lot depending on interest, and there's a lot of room to work on that. So now I want to just show you a bit how this looks like from the mix and match side. So if I see here, you have Uber ontology terms. I have a Wikidata account. I have trouble to zoom in and zoom out. Yeah. And I can go ahead here and see, for example, Bursov Fabricius, and then I can check. All right, Bursov Fabricius has these characteristics, lymphoid organ, cloaca birds, and Wikidata. We don't have much information, but yeah, epithelial outgrowth in the cloaca birds. It looks like it refers to the same concept, and then I can go here and mix and match and confirm these mappings. And I can be a bit quicker and just make sure, hey, fat bad, and then there's this description on Wikidata. It looks okay. Then I can confirm. Of course, later someone can remove these mappings or add them, so they are all community curated. It may be the case that they are not 100% correct, but they have a decent coverage and it's fast, right? It's very fast. You can edit each single term independently. You don't need to open a GitHub issue, download the ontology, download Protege, fix Protege bugs, make a pull request, discuss, and add. You can just click a button and make the mapping. That's why they are faster than ontologies, but also less, let's say, less discussed than ontologies when they are made. Yeah, another way that people do curation on Wikidata is some kind of drive-by curation. When you upload a mix and match catalog and you are just browsing on Wikidata, for some reason you end up in the page for the Spinocerebellus tract, you can see, hey, there's a Nuber ontology term that hasn't been mapped yet, and you can do the mapping. And so the mappings go on. You get the idea. And of course, you could do these mappings for some kind of automatic way. So ontologies have database cross-references that Andrea has made very good points that they not always mean that one term is an exact match to another. Sometimes they are used in different ways. You know better than me, but each ontology has a bit of, let's say, accents. They have different ways they use the strict terms, and it might be the case that you have Scott's exact match, you maybe have DB XREFs, but in some situations, for example, for the spinocerebellar tract that I just shown, the mapping from Ubron to MASH is encoded in Ubron. The mapping from Wikidata to MASH is encoded in Wikidata, but the mapping between Wikidata to Ubron is not encoded anywhere. So this is one of the cases where if this kind of relation was consistent, you could write some bot and some reconciliation that pulled this automatically. And that's basically it on my end. So I have just a few points that where I think these mappings are, where are the gaps where we are going that direction. So I think the licensing details that Andrea mentioned, they are a very important step. We don't know exactly what we can bring to Wikidata, what we cannot. We don't know that if the labels are protected by creative copyright, if the definitions are creative works and then are protected, if the structure, we don't know what is protected and what is not. And I don't think anyone really has a definite decision on whether everything is protected or everything is not protected. So figuring out licensing details is a very important step for moving on with these mappings. But once we have a kind of an agreement that the mappings are useful, these automatic matching workflows have to be improved. Sometimes the mappings are in XREFs, sometimes in exact matches. We need tooling, we need work on that. The string-based creation workflows are, as I showed you, they work, but they are not so good. They are slow and you have to go point by point, and maybe we need better things. And also it's static, right? It doesn't update when the ontologies are updated. So there's always some kind of lag in the system. And finally, we should find ways of how the communities can help each other, right? So can I import statements, axioms from the obo ontologies to Wikidata? Maybe I can import them from the Uber graph to Wikidata. Or maybe the other way around. Maybe Wikidata has statements, perhaps cross-references or other kinds of information that could be added by curators in ontologies in a simple way. Perhaps we could write parsers that go from Wikidata to the other. So I think there are ways that we can think and how these communities can go together. But I've already talked too much, and I think we can stop now and we can discuss a bit on how this can be useful.
Yeah, I want to add two things. First of all, I think the licensing issue is not specific to Wikidata. I ran into the same issue within OBO even, because we see a lot of reuse of OBO ontologies, and I can easily dig up a case where a CC0 ontology is ingesting CC BY ontology terms for ontology terms, and the legality there are also an issue. The other thing that that I would like to address is what Thiago says. They are actually, in my opinion, Wikidata is complementary. To give an example, so Thiago introduced mix and match. I am not a big fan of mix and match because there is one problem with mix and match. It's a one-time import, and as we all know, in OBO, OBO terms are not static. There is it's a moving target. So when there is a mapping now, that mapping might not exist in 2 months from now. This was tackled in the GeneWiki project where we had these update cycles, but the funding cycle for GeneWiki ended. So now the bots are all just idle or in hibernation mode. So the bots are not running. So basically all the GeneWiki related items have not been updated for over a year now. And then we can only rely on mix and match solutions. So it's a two-edged sword. And but that also brings me to the second point is Wikidata, because the funding cycle is a big issue, which typically means that data sources just get packed up or end up in drawers. And that is really a selling point for Wikidata, because the data that was generated by funded projects continue on and can be picked up later. We are currently working on projects that will reuse the GeneWiki work. And the final thing is an example that I would like to give. When we wrote the bot for the disease ontology, I still remember the curators from the disease ontology. We spent a lot of time, and the moment we said, okay, go, and the bot ran. So it took about, at that time, it took a whole night to get all of disease ontology into Wikidata. And the next morning, there was a euphoric feeling, because suddenly every disease ontology term had on average 7.5 translations to the terms. But before we added it to Wikidata, it was actually only an English ontology, which is the other very important selling point for Wikidata. It brings multilinguality to your ontologies. So these were my 2 points, and I think we can now start answering questions.
First of all, let me thank you too. This was really, really excellent, super informative. So thanks for that. And yeah, if anyone wants to just chime in on questions, they can unmute themselves and just jump in. Else I can also get it started. So in projects like this, where you, I think, correctly point out that if we want to build infrastructure that actually synchronizes some of the content that we generate with Wikidata, then it has to be an infrastructure that is based on bots, based on some kind of ongoing process, which begs for me 2 questions. So one is who is kind of like owning these bots and who is providing the computational power for it? And secondly, and related to that, who and how is Wikidata actually funded, and how high is the risk, for example, that let's say in 5 years, when everyone is like all about ChatGPT or something, they say, I don't care about structured data anymore. I only want my little box and ask the question. So how much longevity do you guys assess to Wikidata from your current perspective?
I'm not worrying at the moment because that also means if Wikidata dies out, so does Wikipedia. So we can extend the question to Wikipedia, because it is currently funded by the Wikimedia Foundation, and there it's fully funded by, maybe Thiago knows more on that, it's fully funded by donations. And they have been going strong for 20 years. So that's one question. The other part of the equation is we've recently wrote a paper on subsetting Wikidata to tackle this as well, because you can actually never know. You're completely right. I mean, I can only guess, and I only want to answer your question with respect to ChatGPT over beer, because yeah, nobody knows at the moment. I don't worry that much. I'm really excited about the value of ChatGPT, and we should maybe really think about this. But again, now over beer, and maybe later a bit when the contours get better, have no more. But I think the risk is less with Wikidata than with any funded research project. So that's the thing. I mean, we have the mechanisms now in place to share our research funded projects on Wikidata. So Wikidata we can maybe see it as a cache so that the data can live on, and maybe other projects continue on that. And then the subsetting work that is now ongoing. There are other projects that are cloning Wikidata, which comes on with a lot of other issues. But I mean, Virtuoso now makes a copy of Wikidata. So there's a lot of efforts in there to actually distribute that knowledge, but that is something we need to see. But looking back, I think we're still in a strong place, given that it's so closely tied to Wikipedia.
Yeah, these are very good questions, Nico. So trying to answer that also, who owns the bots that make the links? There are individuals that kind of do that. They are hosted in many different ways. So Android has many different bots, and they are hosted in some, I think some computer in California in the Sioux lab in a Jenkins kind of hosting. So there are bots that I own, and then I run them from my personal computer in my home. And you have Scolia that was just shown, and a lot of stuff they run in ToolForge and the Wikimedia servers. So they're kind of paid by the Wikimedia Foundation. So the computational resources to do this kind of stuff, in theory, you can use the Wikimedia Foundation, who is funded, as Andrea mentioned, by donations, but they also have an endowment that has a lot of money from different big donors, and then it has a flux. It has a money that doesn't rely that much on just new donations. It also has a like of running money for. And ChatGPT question is really good. I have no idea of how much Wikidata will be relevant, and how ontologies will be relevant for that matter. But as Andrea mentioned, I'm optimistic that it will help us to do these mappings, to do these relations, and we cannot really say much for now. But I mean, I'm optimistic. Yeah.
So, but Nico, if I can extend it, first of all, the bot in California no longer exists. The project ended. So any bot I now run, I do on my laptop actually, or on GitHub Actions, and that works. So again, there Microsoft is funding that. But I actually should ask the question back to you, because the difficulty of running bots in Wikidata is not an infrastructural one. It can easily run on any laptop whatsoever. The problem is, and I have to look, and I think you as an obo community should know that, the problem with Wikidata, which takes, like, I think in my opinion, but I have no numbers to substantiate it, but I think close to 90% of the work is really about reconciliation and curation. Is with this mapping between a database X and Y, the obo term between two ontologies, the definitions. I mean, that is the more challenging part with Wikidata, and not in Wikidata with any database. And when you go with interoperability pipelines, it's how do we make decisions on the underlying schemas? What is which ontology should we pick? If the ontology, which version should we only go with active versions, or can we use obsolete ontologies? It is this kind of questions where I worry more than the infrastructural part of Wikidata, because that can be easily replaced. That is just a matter of laptops and GitHubs, and I mean, we need to be creative there, but that's not the issue.
There's a lot to say about that, but I want to make sure that other people in the audience have a chance to ask something, and then we can continue if you want later on that question. Anyone else wants to ask something?
I see some
just can we
hands
have
being
the
raised.
slides?
Sure.
So this is Gary Berg for us. I do have a question. It's some related to what Andro was talking about. Both Wikidata and ontologies, as well as schema.org, have taxonomic structures to organize them. I'm just thinking, what do we know about the relationship in the biomedical field, the taxonomic structure, and what we see in Wikidata?
The relationship, so you're asking if there is a relationship with bioschemas and obo anything and their representation in Wikidata, right?
Because this is a very important. What the superclasses are for a particular item is a very important relationship within the ontologies. But if they don't match up to what a well-researched ontology, biomedical ontology is, then it's a bit confusing about and would be damaging to interoperability. So I'm just wondering if people have struggled to make the structures within Wikidata for a biomedical field match to some degree, a useful degree,
Yes.
what's in obo ontologies.
Yes, only. Again, I'm not diving into the licensing issue, because in Wikidata it's only when those ontologies are public ontologies and the license issue. But yes, that's the whole idea. You cannot put into Wikidata a statement by design. I'm not saying that it's not happening, but by design you have to use the references and the qualifiers. And Wikidata is not a primary source, so we cannot. So there should be an exact match between a term and its ontology that it's coming from. So if the data is coming from the disease ontology or Mondo or any of those ontologies, schema.org, there should be direct explicit links within Wikidata to that. There is a property which is just a copy of exact match in there. But this ties a bit back into what I just said, where the complexity is, because it is not trivial to read into those mappings in even those good funded projects. I mean, if we have a DBXref or we have a C also or an exact match, what is the semantics to those mappings? But when I was working those bots and I was making a mapping to, for example, the disease ontology, I would only add mappings if there is an exact match with the disease ontology. So there was always a direct link between the disease item in Wikidata and the one in Wikidata. Having said that, due to the pluriformity and the allowance of having disagreement in Wikidata, it's my personal opinion that Wikidata is not a great source for ontological reasoning. You can use it as a menu card, and I would say go to those links, go to the original resources and use that information.
Yeah, I'm going to just extend on Andres. I shared an article there. So there's a lot of conceptual disarray on Wikidata. Things that are subclass and in stuff, the same thing at the same time, because these things are complicated. You need a lot of study to understand really how to do this. And maybe you need some kind of hierarchy, organizational hierarchy to fix and decide what should be the structure here and there. As Andrew mentioned, the Wikidata is cooperative. So I don't think we should import the ontological relations on Wikidata to ontologies, but there are many other statements and things that could be handled better than this strict ontological subclassing relations.
To me, an exact match must require a common superclass, right? Or to me, it's not an exact match.
I think if I may chip in on this one, so I think that this really depends on your perspective on what these mappings are used for. So if you're thinking from the perspective of someone who's doing, like I guess yourself and your community is doing a lot of like logical integration, you would think of these exact matches more like equivalent class statements, or maybe even complex subclass statements or something like that. But I think for many of the use cases that are driven from more noisy sources like Wikidata is, I think the matches are used more for, they're not used in the strict logical sense. They're more for like, you know, rough data, let's say data grouping, or even if you are building, let's say, machine learning tools on top of these things. Like I guess that something like ChatGPT could benefit, for example, from like a natural language version of all of Wikidata in its internal state. So I think these are much more for very rough scenarios. Yeah? So I wouldn't trust a subclass axiom in Wikidata, because if you pull from, let's say, different resources, and you see how Mondo does it, every source will have a different opinion on whether Alzheimer is a subclass of this other disease, or whether this other disease is a child of Alzheimer. You know, these are very very difficult to reconcile at scale, and this is not the purpose of a hub like Wikidata, I think.
So if I'm venturing in that space with Wikidata, I'm only using it to extract seed corpora. So I have no knowledge. I'm not aware of any ontology in that space. Then I'm using Wikidata to go into give me the ontologies. And then ideally, I try to go to the ontologies. It is about findability. It's not about doing the full ontological work in Wikidata using I don't know, maybe I should think a bit more, but I would say it's a subset of the ontology. So yes, there are people doing reasoning. There are subclass relationships in there that you can use, so you can get some rudimentary ontologies in there, but I would advise against it for many reasons.
All right, we are at time, so let's take a moment to thank our speakers again. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Tiago. This was really, really nice. And yeah, see you all next time, and have a very, very great week.